Princess Leonor in tears, her groom delivers emotional ASL vows to her family. They expected tradition. They expected protocol. They expected polished words rehearsed for weeks. But what unfolded at the royal wedding stunned Spain, the world, and even Princess Leonor herself. Because when her groom stood before her family, he did not speak. He signed. Yes, the future Queen of Spain's wedding vows began not with sound, but with silence. And in that silence, a love story unlike any the monarchy has ever known began to echo louder than 1,000 cheers. Why would a royal groom choose to pledge his heart in American Sign Language? Why did the palace agree? And what secret truth made Princess Leonor break into tears before the watching world? This is not a tale of simple romance. It is a story of heritage, courage, and a gesture of love so powerful it redefined royal tradition in one unforgettable moment. The story begins with anticipation. Spain's capital, Madrid, had never looked so alive. Streets filled with flowers, flags, and faces pressed close together, citizens waiting for their young queen to step into history. Princess Leonor, radiant in her gown, carried not only the weight of beauty but the responsibility of centuries. The monarchy depends on moments like these, moments that bind a nation together. Yet for all the pageantry, for all the splendor, there was an undercurrent few understood. Because behind the closed doors of Zarzuela Palace, quiet questions lingered. Would Leonor's groom rise to the occasion? Could he blend into the traditions of Spain while carrying his own? And most of all, would the family accept him? From the very beginning, there was tension. The groom, a man admired for his quiet dignity, came from outside Spain's royal traditions. Rumors swirled of his unconventional background, of his reluctance to live entirely within palace rules. Some whispered he might not even be ready to take vows in the manner expected. The Spanish people love their monarchy, but they also guard it fiercely. And so, when the groom approached the altar, the nation leaned forward. What would he say? Would his words falter? Would his accent betray him? Or would he rise, delivering the promise of a lifetime to the future queen? What happened instead silenced the crowd. The groom lifted his hands, and began to sign. American Sign Language. Not Spanish, not English, not Castilian traditions, but ASL. A language of the hands, the face, the heart. The royal family froze. The cameras zoomed in. Princess Leonor's eyes widened. And then, as the first vow formed not in sound but in movement, tears streamed down her face. Why ASL? Why here, in front of kings, queens, ministers, and millions watching worldwide? The answer begins not with Leonor, but with her groom's family. His grandmother, nearly deaf since childhood, had raised him with ASL as her first language. For him, vows in any other form would have felt incomplete. And yet, the palace had not expected it. Leonor understood immediately. She knew what it meant for him to risk tradition, to stand vulnerable in front of the monarchy and the press, and to pledge himself not in the world's language but in his family's. This was not rebellion. This was honor. And so her tears fell, not in shame, but in recognition. Her groom was not just marrying her. He was marrying Spain, while carrying the legacy of his own bloodline. But what exactly did he sign? This question rippled across the cathedral like a wave. Because not everyone watching understood the language. Some thought it a bold act of defiance. Others wondered if it had been planned, or if it was a last-minute decision. Only Leonor and a few close interpreters knew the truth in real time. He signed, simply, to your family, I vow respect. To your country, I vow loyalty. To you, Leonor, I vow love greater than life. 3 vows. 3 promises. One silent, unshakable moment. It was then that Queen Letizia herself, mother of Leonor, wiped her own tears. King Felipe looked stern, but observers noticed the way his shoulders relaxed, subtle approval, though restrained. The Spanish royals are not often moved publicly. But that day, they were human before they were monarchs. Still, questions remained. Would the Spanish people accept vows made in a language not their own? Would critics accuse the groom of disrespecting tradition? Would this spark debate about the role of monarchy in a globalized world? The answer came not in words, but in applause. At first hesitant, then rolling like thunder through the cathedral, the people clapped, cheered, and even wept. For in that moment, they saw not division, but unity. A union of love that transcended language. And yet, the curiosity deepens. If the vows were given in ASL, what of the response? How would Leonor, raised in Spanish tradition, reply? Here lies the twist that sealed the story. Because as the groom lowered his hands, Leonor lifted hers. And though her signing was imperfect, though her movements were shaky with emotion, she answered him in ASL. I understand you. I choose you. And together, we will serve. 3 phrases. Enough to break her groom. Enough to ignite the press. Enough to show the world that Spain's young queen would not be bound by convention alone, but would honor both tradition and love. From that moment, the whispers changed. What began as doubt turned to admiration. Leonor had not only embraced her groom's heritage, but woven it into her monarchy. And in doing so, she set the tone for her reign, modern, compassionate, unafraid. Historians will point to this wedding as more than a union of 2 hearts. It was the moment Spain saw its monarchy step into a new age. The moment when vows signed in silence spoke louder than any crown. But what of the family? Behind palace walls, not all were pleased. Some courtiers muttered that the gesture was too dramatic, too foreign. There were rumors of friction, of relatives who feared tradition slipping away. Yet the people had already chosen. And when the people choose, even monarchs must listen. The cathedral bells rang. The vows were sealed. Princess Leonor and her groom left hand in hand, not as symbols of power alone, but as a couple who had chosen authenticity over expectation. And still the curiosity continues. What will their reign look like, bound not by old forms but by courage? What future children will inherit not only Spain's throne, but a legacy of love that crosses languages, traditions, and borders? The world does not yet know. But one thing is certain. When the groom lifted his hands and spoke through silence, he did more than marry a princess. He showed a kingdom, and the world, that true love does not need sound to be heard. And Princess Leonor's tears that day, they were not weakness. They were strength. Proof that even in the highest halls of royalty, the heart speaks louder than the crown.